Hello and good evening. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith. Today's date is Friday, July 18th, and the time is 9:16 p.m. I am in Miami, Florida. And the topic of this lecture is going to be the ideal population and the technology used to secure that population. Now, ultimately, every topic that is relevant in today's world boils down to one central question. And that central question is, what is the ideal population? And we're not just talking the ideal population here in Miami, or the ideal population of the state of Florida, or the ideal population in the United States. We're talking about what is the ideal population on planet Earth. In other words, who on planet Earth right now has the right to be here? And who on planet Earth right now has the right to conceive offspring to inhabit this earth? That's what everything you could possibly imagine with respect to human capabilities is all about. Ultimately, every news story that you hear, every movie that's made, every technological innovation that's created, every word that's said, every paper that's written, every move that a person makes upon this earth, every church sermon preached, every college lecture given, every achievement that is acknowledged, every award that is given, every credential that is assigned, every job that is acquired, every business that is successful, every song that's written, every book that's written, every piece of literature that's written, every move that a person makes upon this earth today is recorded in various capacities. If it's not recorded by a government, a company, a recording device as I have, and mind you, I'm going to have to raise my voice in various intervals due to the traffic. I do these recordings outside. Okay? Everything a person does is recorded in some capacity. If it's not recorded using sophisticated technology, it's recorded by the brain of another person. If you see somebody do that, your brain records what you've seen. If somebody says something around you, your brain records what is said. If you witness a scene or a circumstance or a scenario or a series of scenarios, your brain records what it has witnessed. These recordings are transcoded as human memories. Memories of the past, and how these memories affect human behavior. Every hospital visit that a person completes, every doctor's note, every injection that a person has to undergo to stay healthy, every prescription that a person has to use, these kinds of things are recorded electronically. Congressional matters, for example, debates on the Senate floor, they're recorded electronically, either by television, broadcast. Some are recorded using various sophisticated recording mechanisms. Like, for example, they are live streamed on various cable websites or news websites or various other communicative devices, like, for example, cell phone recordings made by people in attendance, and so forth. Other matters, for example, take a championship match of a sporting event. Those are also recorded electronically. They're broadcast to various television stations. They're broadcast live on various web outlets. They're broadcast in a wide variety of mediums. And still other events, for example, take a Philharmonic Orchestra, for example. When a orchestra goes to a specific venue to perform classical music, for example, it is recorded using a variety of sophisticated mediums, similar to the previous mediums mentioned, particularly political venues or sporting events. In contrast to that, a school play is recorded and transmitted using more private means. Perhaps the venue that's hosting the school play is recording using its own equipment, particularly video cameras, etc. And it's possible that people in the audience are recording using their own listening devices, etc. And so forth. Still, in contrast to that, if you were to visit, for example, a college library, your web activity is recorded as well. Although not broadcast to a wide audience, it's still recorded in the sense that the college or university is keeping an inventory of all of the websites that you visit, how long you're visiting these websites, and how long your overall session lasts. It may also record things like anything you print on the university or college's printer and what the components or details of that print job are. Still, in other recording mechanisms, take for example a graduation ceremony. Everything that happens in that graduation ceremony is recorded as well. For example, the valedictorian speech is recorded via various mechanisms, and there's also a transcript of that speech that is kept in school records for future use. Still, in other matters, take courtroom proceedings. Everything that takes place in a courtroom is also recorded. Some courtrooms allow video cameras. Some courtrooms complete their proceedings via Zoom. Still, other courtrooms use more conventional methods such as a court reporter or a typist that records everything that's said in the courtroom via a typing device. Still, in other matters, take a sales chart for a company, for example. Companies record their sales performances. They record what items are hot sellers, what items are not, how their product is doing with target audiences, and it also records what cities and states consume more of what product than other cities or states, so they know what product to market in what city, in what state, to maximize growth, to maximize revenue, to maximize brand awareness. Church services are now recorded. There was a time in American history where church services were simply performed by the congregation. The pastor preached the sermon, the choir sang the music, and the congregation gave their various amens. Nowadays, church services are recorded. Some of them are broadcast live streaming to various social media platforms. Some of them are recorded via in-house video cameras. And still, there are other sophisticated methods for recording church services as well. For example, transcripts of every sermon, etc. Ultimately, we live in a world of recorded interactions. Interactions between the government and the people, for example, courtrooms. Interactions between clergymen and the people, for example, church services. Interactions between corporations and the people, for example, that sales chart. Interactions between institutions of higher learning and the people, for example, the college library. Interactions between people and live events and the companies that produce those live events, for example, the widely broadcast sporting event. And people record their interactions with one another plainly. It isn't uncommon for people to turn on their cell phone's recorder when talking to somebody. It isn't uncommon for a person to record a cellular conversation with somebody. It isn't uncommon for people to take screen captures of their text messages with a person. And still, beyond all of these sophisticated electronic means of recording human behavior, if none of that existed, we're still recording each other with our thoughts, with our brains, with our memories, and don't forget the old pencil and paper, which is what people in this country had to use to record pretty much everything for most of this country's history, actually. We've only recently begun the digital age. In prehistoric times, people recorded events using stone tools like a hammer and a chisel, and they would record various instances and ideas on the walls of caves. From there, methods of recording human interactions and behavior with the world around it became more and more sophisticated. Why? Well, for a number of reasons. Earlier in man's history, I think humans recorded the events of the world around them simply out of curiosity. When we started seeing more advanced civilizations and we started seeing kingdoms and empires, they started recording things like tax collecting. Who's paying their taxes to the state and who isn't? Okay, they recorded the workload of their citizens. Who works where and in what capacity? Eventually, we started becoming more sophisticated with our recording mechanisms, and we started issuing addresses, phone numbers. We started having sophisticated names for cities and states and countries. We developed things like city planning and advanced architecture. We begun issuing complex laws and sophisticated means for enforcing those laws. And even later in human history, we started using advanced militaries to ensure that the populace of a specific country had a chance at survival should another country invade. To give you a summation of human progression over the millennia, why do we record now? Trillions upon trillions of dollars are spent not only by governments and companies, but by the people on technology that allows us to better understand the world around us, to better understand the economic mechanisms around us, the legal mechanisms around us, the political mechanisms around us, the religious mechanisms around us, all mechanisms around us. We must record what happens around us if we are to better understand, because the human brain has a finite ability to remember. So if we record, if we document, then we can reference these recordings, we can reference these documentations to make better decisions on human progression, on the ability to live a good life, and on the ability to pass down these lessons to our progeny so they can do even better during their lifetime. And that's something that humans take pride in. Every generation has more than the previous generation did with respect to how they were, the technology that was available when they were children growing up, and the resources that they had to expand their learning throughout their young years. because it prepares them for their adult years, which are the critical years with respect to being able to contribute to society, being able to advance society. Eventually, humans will come to a place where they reach the most efficient way of living, and that is where our lecture today will begin. What is the point of all of this sophistication? And how does this sophistication affect mankind? Why does this sophistication affect mankind? And to what end does this sophistication affect mankind? Now, my particular interest in technology comes from the perspective of a targeted individual. That is a person who has been clandestinely entered into something called a gang stalking campaign. Now, what is the point of a gang stalking campaign, and how does it factor into, first, the advancement of civilization, the advancement of mankind, and the ability to understand human behavior better through documentation? Well, first and foremost, everything a targeted person does is documented. There is nothing that a targeted person does not do that is not documented. The time you wake up, the time you go to sleep, and everything you do in between is documented, including what time you use the bathroom, how often you use the bathroom, and how often you essentially relieve yourself, etc., etc., etc. And I use the restroom point because that is the most intimate place that a person goes, and that is documented. How and why? The understanding of human behavior is a complex thing, and in order to understand why the furtherance of human knowledge is important with respect to human behavior is rooted in a concept called eugenics. Now, eugenics is a fairly controversial topic because it essentially is a group's idea of the ideal person. Now, how do you figure out who and what the ideal person is? Well, that's a complex one because different cultures and different civilizations have different ideas of what the ideal person is. So, for example, in the United States, the ideal person is typically seen as someone who abides by the law, who is educated at least through high school, who works for their living, and who teaches their offspring to do the same. Furthermore, there are other nuances to what the ideal person is in the United States with respect to their religious leanings and how they apply religion to their life. Furthermore, an ideal person is typically one who finds love in marriage and works and pays taxes and then leaves their offspring something when they pass on to the next life. it's hard to craft in American culture a more ideal person than that. Now, what about the people who don't fit that category of the ideal person? What do you do with them? Well, let's go back to eugenics. And I'll speak briefly on this before we go into the technological ways that the ideal person is created, or at the very least identified. So I'll speak briefly on some things that the Vice Chancellor of World War II era Germany, Adolf Hitler, believed. Adolf Hitler believed that the ideal person was essentially an Aryan, which in Hitler's world meant a certain hair color, a certain eye color, a certain fairness of skin, born to male and female parents, and loyal to the state at all costs. Hitler's idea of the ideal society is a purely Aryan society without the mixture of non-Aryans, and that includes Western Europeans, Eastern Europeans, Southern Europeans, and Mediterranean people. Hitler's idea of the ideal person were Northern Europeans, and essentially that's pretty much the gist of it, just to give you a summation. And even though Hitler himself was likely not an Aryan person, he advocated for an Aryan society, indeed an Aryan world, because that was his idea of an ideal world. Now, I'm going to tie in gang stalking to this by explaining some of the weapons technology that we see in gang stalking. And I know already that this is a 48-page document I'm about to read from. And I know for a fact that there are third parties that have already retrieved this document from me via data collection. And I'm okay with that so long as you're a member of a government. If you work or in some capacity for a government or a company that is a derivative of a government, I have no problem with you intercepting any of my data, because all you'll get is the truth, the unfettered truth. Now, if you are a third party who is simply good at hacking, or you are just some other U.S. citizen that enjoys digging through people's information and just ripping stuff off, some of you guys take people's work and pass it off on your own, okay? I call that being a weasel. But there is a sophisticated term for what you do, and I'm going to get into that tonight. It's called Project Echelon. It's where you rip off other people's work using hacking methods, and you either pass it off as your own work, or you sell other people's work to third parties so they can pass it off as their work. So you're basically taking somebody else's hard work and passing it off as your own, or selling it to a third party so that they can use your work to make a profit and not pay you. Okay, Project Echelon is something we will talk about. Now, I'm going to bring in weapons technology and gang stalking to this conversation, because all of this is used to record human behavior, to record human interactions with the world around it, and to find out who, if any, possess the kinds of qualities that could make the ideal American citizen less ideal. Okay, now we're going to start with global neural network, and these are all definitions that tie into gang stalking. And a targeted individual's gang stalking campaign is oftentimes highly derivative of these various terms that I'm going to be discussing with you today in this lecture. So we're going to talk about global neural network, and then we're going to go all the way down. There are several definitions, and we'll give brief. We'll give you, and I will give you brief definitions of these terms and how they're applicable. Global neural network is and these are all the definitions are a combination of definitions that I found using Google's AI search module, my own work, Wikipedia, and Encyclopedia Britannica, mostly, and then various other websites as well have influenced my definitions to these various terms. So global neural network is a possible reference to global interconnectedness that goes beyond the global economy and delves into homogeneous behaviors and persons. So in other words, a global neural network is an ideal system of human behavior where there's singularity, meaning oneness in human behavior. Why is oneness in human behavior a desirable thing for a government or governments? It's desirable because it eliminates It eliminates diversity in behavior, okay? And when I say diversity in behavior, it means we want more of the upright, working class, responsible, married, tax-paying citizens, okay? That exhibit financial responsibility and faith. We want to engineer more of those kinds of people, because these kinds of people are less likely to cause harm to other people and thus make for a safer society. That is the overarching definition of singularity in human behavior. That's the kind of singularity that a global neural network would provide for. The next term is called D-Wave, which is basically electronically finding the easiest possible solution to a tangible problem. And mind you, I'm going to expound upon some of these definitions more than others, as some of these definitions have more relevance to a targeted individual's situation than others. And mind you, a targeted individual is, for all intents and purposes, deemed as the opposite of the ideal person, which is why they're used as guinea pigs for these various protocols and mechanisms, which are basically supposed to be data collection on human behavior mechanisms that are supposed to make future generations better. So we got quantum computing, which is large-scale computing aimed at quickly finding commonalities in user behavior, thus giving the user better algorithmic suggestions. So in other words, it's how search engines and social media websites and so forth know what to show you in your news feed based on your likes and so forth, based on the number of clicks you do on a certain topic and so forth. Those things all calculate into your algorithm, so they know what to show you, what you'll be interested in, and what you'll be more likely to participate in. And mind you, participation online is important in collecting data about human behavior, namely so that ideal behaviors can be identified by your government, and behaviors that are less than ideal can also be identified by your government, so that the ideal citizen can be created through the transmission of this information, namely through schools, churches, colleges, television, radio, etc., to create the ideal mindset in people. We have 5G technology, fifth generation telecommunications technology inspired by the International Telecommunication Union, which adheres to a United Nations specifications and standards. We have DNA biometrics collection. This is basically DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid, a collection of special or unique physiological traits of each person, blood type, fingerprints, hair sample, saliva sample, genital excretion samples, dead skin samples, and any physical specimen that can identify a person. This is important because it helps law enforcers and military personnel alike discover who committed what crime, and it allows them to identify people using these specimens, and so that they'll have some idea of who to look for and who to charge with whatever crime it was that required the investigation. This is important because it advances law and order in a country, which is definitely important for a cohesive civilization. We got biocoded resonance frequencies, which is electronically monitoring how frequently living organisms change between states, moods, disposition, or physiological states. Now, this is important, and mind you, I'm going to raise my voice at various intervals throughout this lecture because there's a lot of traffic, and I like to do these lectures outside. This is important because you can remotely or electronically monitor a person's mood and how often they change moods. And these moods will include happy, sad, joyful, anxious, perplexed. Any mood that a person can feel can be recorded remotely using some of the technology that I'm going to get into a bit later. Brainwaves give away a person's mood, and it's not that difficult to monitor someone's brainwaves remotely, particularly with some of these various technologies that we're going to go over tonight. And mind you, the monitoring of a person's brainwaves is especially useful in a targeted individual's gang stalking campaign, because it's very likely, if not definitely likely, conducted by governmental auxiliaries who are collecting data on how this program is affecting targeted persons. We got biorhythm hacking. We got the ability to observe, alter, and disrupt a person's biorhythm or the physiological continuity of their life. So, for example, let's say I wanted to hack your biorhythm. That is essentially me surveilling you for periods of time and finding out when you wake up, what your daily routine is, and when you go to bed at night, and essentially trying to alter that in some way using third-party disruption methods. That's called biorhythm hacking, because a person's biorhythm is basically their daily movements. What they do from sun up to sundown, that's their biorhythm. And when their biorhythm reaches sort of a daily continuity, or a daily what we call routine, that's ultimately your biorhythm, is your daily routine. If I can hack into your biorhythm by observing you, then that means that I can disrupt your daily movements and eventually control your life if I have the personnel and the technological resources. We have DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research and Programming Agency. This is sort of an all-in-one technological military-industrial agency that essentially finds innovations in everything from artillery to medicines and everything in between. I mean, there's really nothing technology-wise that DARPA does not investigate, learn from, and innovate. And apparently The Economist magazine has called DARPA the agency that shaped the modern world. So ultimately, you can't talk about gang stalking or anything that has to do with human experimentation or the advanced monitoring of human behavior without talking about DARPA in some capacity. Okay, so we got N3, which is human experimentation that resembles that which is conducted on animals, but in a way so as to observe human behaviors out in the open. And we have nanotechnology, which is the science and engineering of manipulating matter at the molecular or atomic scale, typically at dimensions less than 100 nanometers. It involves manipulating atoms and molecules to create structures with new chemical and physical properties, leading to applications in various fields such as electronics, medicine, energy, and textiles. This technology has revolutionized industries by enabling the development of high-performance products and innovative solutions. We have graphene oxide, which is a perfect black material that absorbs all light. It is also the world's strongest material, even stronger than a diamond. And it is an excellent conductor of heat and electricity, and it is used in solar panels. We have smart dust, which is an especially interesting topic for me. It's basically a dust that is comprised of tiny autonomous microsensors that can collect a wide range of data about its surroundings. This includes environmental data like temperature, humidity, and air quality, as well as physical data such as vibration, pressure, and acceleration. Additionally, smart dust can detect light, magnetic fields, and even the presence of certain chemicals. In some applications, smart dust can also collect biometric data and images. So imagine a dust that I could hold in the palm of my hand, and I could throw that dust into your living room, and that dust would take a picture of your living room and transmit it to me on a computer screen. Okay, I'll repeat that. I can take a handful of dust, throw it into your living room, and that dust will take a perfect picture of your living room and transmit it to me on a computer screen. Whatever's in your living room. That is a very sophisticated spying mechanism, smart dust. And I wouldn't doubt that there are targeted individuals that have had that thrown at them or into their living quarters to take pictures quickly of them inside to see exactly what they're up to. We have hydrogel, which is a cross-linked polymer network that can absorb and retain large amounts of water, mimicking the properties of natural tissues. They are used in a wide range of applications, including wound care, drug delivery, tissue engineering, and even as a base for cosmetics. We have extremely low frequencies, which is interesting because it's basically a frequency that can be used as a weapon. It's basically a type of radiation that, if used on humans for various periods of time, can lead to psychological problems, reproductive problems, immune system deficiency, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is a frequency, not that much different than a radio frequency or any other kind of frequency, that can be pointed at a person from a remote location. And mind you, frequencies are invisible. The human eye cannot catch a frequency. Yes, there are frequencies, and mind you, every definition that I have put on this discourse can be fact-checked online with the National Library of Health or various other credible websites. And every piece of technology that we're going to talk about tonight exists today in various capacities and is used by governments, military. Some are used by law enforcement agencies, and some are used by people who can purchase these items and use them for mischief, criminal mischief. So yes, you can impose cancer on a person using extremely low frequencies. If you point that frequency at a person for a long enough period of time, you can induce cancer against that person. Scalar wave. Some individuals going scalar wave therapy may experience symptoms associated with detoxification, such as headache, muscle aches, gastrointestinal upset, or feeling like they have a hangover. This is attributed to the therapy stimulating cellular detoxification process. That's a scalar wave. It is a radio wave that can be aimed at a person to induce a feeling of intoxication. That can be used against a person for a number of reasons, including to disrupt them, especially if they work a job that requires physical exertion. You can use scalar waves. You can use scalar waves to make that person weaker at their job so that they cannot perform right. We got the boosting process, which is an algorithmic machine learning model that adds upgrade components to weak learner models to help them perform more accurately. We have ultrasonic sound frequency weapons. High frequency sounds, including ultrasound and very high frequency sounds, can affect the human body in various ways, ranging from auditory effects like hearing loss to non-auditory effects such as nausea, headaches, and even changes in brain activity. These effects can be influenced by factors like sound intensity, duration of exposure, and individual sensitivity. Prolonged effects include hearing loss and the damage to delicate hair cells in the inner ear. So this is another frequency weapon which can be generated by any number of devices, where if aimed at a person, and you can aim these devices at a person through their house, because these frequencies travel through walls. So if you aim this frequency at a person for long enough, you can cause serious health problems for them without them knowing exactly what's happened. We're going to go down to pulse modulation, which includes radioactive materials. Some products marketed as scalar energy pendants have been found to contain radioactive materials like uranium-238 and thorium-232, emitting alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. This is another radiation/spectrum weapon that can be used to cause health problems in a person invisibly. We spoke briefly on scalar waves. Masers have thermal effects like sources of electromagnetic radiation. You can use a maser on a person because, like a gamma ray or something to that effect, it is an invisible object that can be aimed at a person, and it creates health concerns, including neurological effects, negative effects in your nervous system. It can induce oxidative stress in various tissues and impact the antioxidant defense system. And it can cause genetic damage. Some studies have suggested that microwave radiation, which, mind you, can be used as a weapon, may cause DNA damage in living organisms. And mind you, I am at the 49-minute mark of this video, which gives me about another 8 or so minutes to record with respect to being able to post this video on TikTok, which is definitely a desired platform. So as I cross the 1 hour mark, every part of this lecture that comes after the 1 hour mark is going to be part 2 of this lecture. So we're going to go down to Vercator. A Vercator is a virtual cathode oscillator and is a microwave generator that is capable of generating brief pulses of turnable narrowband microwaves at a very high power level. The pulse has a magnitude in the range of 100 or more kilovolts and a duration of about 50 to 150 nanoseconds. The electrons are attracted to a thin anode, such as an aluminized PET film or a stainless steel mesh that is connected to the grounded waveguide body. Vercator weapons operate within a wide range of microwave frequencies, typically between 1 and 10 gigahertz, but can also reach into the millimeter wave range, exceeding 39 gigahertz. Exposure to high levels of microwave radiation can cause tissue heating and potential thermal damage, including skin burns and cataracts. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are oscillators, aka microwave generators, that can be used as weapons against a person, causing tissue heating, potential thermal damage, skin burns, and cataracts. And mind you, these technological objects that I'm reading off to you are not only used by militaries in times of war. They can be purchased on the black market by third parties to be used for mischief. Okay? They can also be used by clandestine third parties that are unnamed and unseen for mischief and causing people harm without being seen. We're going to skip down to gyrotron. A gyrotron is a specialized vacuum electronic device that generates high power, high frequency electromagnetic radiation, particularly in the millimeter and sub-millimeter wave range. It utilizes the principle of stimulated cyclotron resonance of electrons moving within a strong magnetic field. These devices are crucial for applications like plasma heating, in fusion reactors, and have potential uses in advanced communications in other areas. The primary potential effect of high-power gyrotron radiation on humans is heating of body tissues, similar to microwaves. And when we say microwaves, we're not talking the kind of microwaves that you put a hot pocket in and heat it up and eat it. Okay? When we talk about microwaves, we're talking about microwaves in terms of the spectrum of waves that exist on the earth. All of these various waves, radio waves, microwaves, gamma rays, X-rays, all of these rays exist in the earth already. It's just a matter of using devices and technology to capture these rays and use them in ways that you want to use them. You might use an X-ray to see in somebody's book bag to see if they have a weapon, or maybe you want to use an X-ray as a doctor to see if somebody's healthy on the inside. But however, there are other uses for X-rays as well. If you can use an X-ray as a weapon, if you use an X-ray, which is an invisible ray, and you are aiming it at somebody for many hours throughout the day, pointing it at the person, you can create horrible health defects in that person from prolonged exposure to X-rays. So all of the various spectrum of rays can be used in various ways or others. It just all depends on who's using the technology and what their cause is. We're going to move down to Raytheon. Raytheon is now part of RTX Corporation formerly known as Raytheon Technologies Corporation. RTX is a major player in the aerospace and defense industry, offering a wide range of products and services for both commercial and military applications. The company was formed from a merger of Raytheon Company and the aerospace business of United Technologies Corporation. So basically, Raytheon is a aerospace and defense company that sells aerospace and defense technologies to governments. Ravenclaw is not a military weapon in the traditional sense, but is rather a software and hardware suite used for electronic warfare by the U.S. Army. It's part of the larger electronic warfare planning and management tool. Ravenclaw specifically is a hardened laptop that integrates with other Army systems to provide real-time intelligence and support for electronic warfare operations. So it's essentially a software that is used exclusively for electronic warfare, which is essentially a protocol of various attacks from one user to another user. For example, the sending of viruses to another user and so forth, or the interception of data, that kind of thing. Ravenclaw is basically it helps conduct modeling and simulation for electronic warfare scenarios. It helps validate or adjust enemy situational templates. It's designed to be integrated with other electronic warfare systems such as VMAX and Saber Fury to provide a comprehensive electronic warfare capability. And you may hear me say at various points in time during this lecture that there are people or persons that are observing or sort of making their presence